Hey Renee, hey Liz. Can you guys hear me? I'm trying not to be too loud. I think Autumn's still sleeping. No, not today, Sarah. Not today. Morning. Hey Haley. You can. Okay, great. Thank you for answering. I appreciate it. Yes, we can hear you. Okay, perfect. Shh. That's Autumn's kitty outside the door. Should I let the cats in? Should I let the cats participate with book club? Morning. Good morning. Morning. How's everyone doing? I'm obviously not in my usual location, but we can still book club it up, right? It's still a thing we can do. I think. I don't think she's going to be able to hear me if I talk like this, because she's got her sound machine on. Hey, Becca. Traveling book club. That's right. It is a traveling book club. Hey. What up? Morning, Amanda. All right, so we are going to read chapter 11. Chapter 11. Of this book. Let's see how it goes. Oh. Hello, good morning. Parents of business vegans will come by and say longer after. Totally understand, Michelle. I hope you have fun with your parents. That sounds pretty great. Or, I guess that depends. But yes, pretty great. Pretty great. Okay, so this is chapter 11, The Queen and the Frog. It was the final moments before dawn, and the stars were slowly fading away as the sky began to brighten. Froggy and the twins had been traveling through dwarf forests for the majority of the night, covering ground as quickly and as quietly as possible. A yard sale in the rain sounds literally like the worst. I love a yard sale, but I don't love the rain. But I guess it's good that it's raining to get the smoke out of there, right, Becca? Something like that? Yeah, okay, anyway. Even after all they had been through together, the twins had never seen Froggy so tense. He constantly watched the path ahead and glanced behind them every few steps to make sure they weren't being followed. You seem stressed, dude, Connor said, looking up at his green friend. These times are definitely worthy of concern, Froggy said. By the way, what is a dude? Oh, Michelle, you don't have to do that to catch up. I have the live scope posted on the video app after it's over, so you can just listen to the same lives and catch up that way if you want, so that you're right on track with us and you don't get ahead. Morning, Shelley. Connor shrugged. Oh, that's lingo in our world. Nothing important, he said. Sorry, I forgot where we were for a second. Alex moved closer to Froggy as they walked, keen to have a more serious conversation. How bad is it really? She asked. We've only heard from those animals in the forest and Mother Goose, but what's your take on it? Froggy sighed. I can't recall a time that's been so troubling, he said. Even when the evil queen was at large, people went on with their lives. Now that the enchantress is back, it's as if the world has stopped. Can't hear you. You're not using headphones because they're both dead. But... Oh, you can't hear me because you're not using headphones, not that I can't be heard. Oh, okay. All right, thank you, Alyssa. Everyone stays indoors, too afraid to come out until the happily ever after assembly can do something. And they haven't done anything? Connor asked. Have they figured out any way to stop her? I'm afraid not, Froggy said. They tried unenchanting the plants covering the Eastern Kingdom, but that was no use. The magic is too strong. Esmir has grown more powerful than anyone ever thought possible. Besides covering the Eastern Kingdom in plants, has the enchantress attacked anything else? Alex asked. That's all for now, Froggy said, which means she's likely to strike again at any moment. Thank you, Shelley. Why is everyone calling it the Eastern Kingdom now? Connor asked. Did I miss something? What happened to the Sleeping Kingdom? Oh, because the kingdom has finally been restored to its former glory from before the Sleeping Curse, Froggy explained. Queen Sleeping Beauty wanted to celebrate the kingdom's restoration by reclaiming its formal title. They were having a huge celebration on the night the Enchantress attacked. Those poor people, they weren't even expecting it. Well, I wonder if my rubber band trick helped, Connor said to himself. Why has Esmea covered the kingdom in plants of all things? Alex asked. If the happily ever after assembly can't stop her magic anymore, why not curse Sleeping Beauty to die again? Like everyone else in the fairy tale world, Froggy could only guess. The symbolism, I'm assuming, Froggy said and rubbed his tired eyes. During the Sleeping Curse, the entire kingdom was covered in thorn bushes and vines because no one was taking care of the grounds. I'm sure Esmea is taking pleasure in seeing all their hard work go to waste by covering it again. She's getting more out of those hostages than casualties. Making people suffer is crueler than killing them, if you ask me. Alex and Connor were a tiny bit relieved to hear this. If hostages were what Enchantress was collecting, then maybe their mom's life wasn't in jeopardy. They just hoped she wasn't suffering. And now the plants are keeping people prisoner there, just like in the Thornbush pit? Alex said to herself, trying to make sense of it all. Doja Cat, I don't think anyone knows what you're talking about, honey. I'm so sorry. I really don't think anyone understands what you're saying, so I think we're just going to have to move on. Exactly, Froggy said, although no one's been able to make a connection between the two. Yeah, but what about Queen Sleeping Beauty and King Chase? Are they all right? Alex asked. Doja, I think it's time to let it go, honey. I don't think anyone knows what you're talking about. I think it's just time to let it go. King Chase is still stuck in the Eastern Kingdom as far as anyone knows, Froggy said. Queen Sleeping Beauty barely made it out. She was attacked while making a run for the border. All of her soldiers were killed, but she survived, thankfully. Soldiers from the Charming Kingdom found her in the forest and brought her back to Charming Palace. That's horrible, Alex said with a sigh. Even though she took our mom, after what we learned about the evil queen, I'm trying to come up with a reason the Enchantress must be misunderstood too, but it's difficult for me. No, Haley, she's not, because Shelley just asked that and they said no. They said it wasn't. No, Haley, that's not what they're saying, because Shelley just asked if she meant accents and they said no. Yeah, we're going to have to move on. We're going to move on. It's okay. Connor grunted. Well, not for me. I don't care what her excuse is. If she hurts Mom in any way, I'll make sure that's the last thing she does. The sun started to rise, and the land around them became more visible. In the distance, the twins were taken aback to see a familiar wall made of gray brick that stretched across the entire horizon. Isn't that the wall surrounding the Red Riding Hood Kingdom? Alex asked. Oh, yeah, Connor said, recognizing it too. Wait, why are we headed here? I thought you were taking us back to your place, Froggy. I am, Froggy reassured. Well, what happened to your hole in the ground? Connor asked. Well, I moved, Froggy said. I live in the castle now, with Queen Red. Froggy blushed a shade of dark green and went silent. Alex and Connor looked at each other with a, "Did you just hear that?" written on their faces. Froggy went ahead of them, crossing through the western gate of Red Riding Hood's famous wall. Good morning, fellas, Froggy said with a nod to the guards in the morning at the gate. Morning, sir, they said back, bowing slightly as he walked past them. The twins ran through the gate and caught up with Froggy on the other side. Wait a minute, Connor said with a laugh. You're living with Red? Are you guys like a couple or something? Froggy turned an even darker green. Well, I suppose so, he said, not too bashful to look them in the eye. I wasn't expecting that, Alex said with raised eyebrows. How the heck did that happen? Connor asked with a confused grin on his face. I mean, you're so worldly, and she's so not. Connor, don't be rude, Alex said and nudged him. No, it's quite all right, Froggy said. It's simple how it all happened, actually. Shortly after I was transformed back to a human by your grandmother, and her castle was rebuilt from the fire, Queen Red invited me over for some tea one afternoon. She wanted to thank me for saving her life during the battle against the evil queen of the Big Bad Wolf Pack. It was only supposed to last an hour or so, but we ended up talking all day. Well, she talked. I listened. But we really connected. And since then, our friendship has taken more of a romantic turn. Their mouths hung wide open, not helping Froggy in the slightest. And how does she feel about you being in your frog form again? Alex asked. It was challenging at first. She was afraid to touch me and wouldn't let me sit on any furniture, but she's come a long way and she now knows it's for the greater good, even if it does put a pause in our relationship for now, Froggy said. Red's really an exceptional woman. You just have to get to know her. Is she still hung up on Jack? Connor asked. Alex gave him a dirty look. The dark green coloring faded from Froggy's face. No, we're working on that, he said. I don't think anyone could ever stop loving someone entirely. Sometimes love turns to hate, but I'm not sure it's possible to ever stop feeling for them. Despite whatever feelings she has left over for Jack, I have no doubts about her affection towards me. Froggy smiled and nodded to himself. Alex and Connor shrugged to each other. Relationships always seemed complicated to them, but they seemed almost impossible to understand under these circumstances. Does it bother you, though? Alex asked, knowing how much she cared for someone else in the past? Froggy shook his head confidently. I figure if Red is willing to accept me, flawed and frogged, then I can do the same for her regardless of what baggage she brings, he said. And in time, the longer Jack and Goldilocks are out of the picture, the better it will be for her. Out of sight, out of mind. Connor said with a snort, looking at him through the corner of his eye. Whatever happened to Jack and Goldilocks anyway? Has anyone heard from them? Yeah, exactly, Shelley. I think that's exactly why they're asking. Oh, very little, actually, Froggy said. Occasionally they'll be spotted on the outskirts of the kingdom and a villager will alert the castle guards, but they've kept pretty quiet, and for mine and Red's sake, I'm not complaining. The twins were happy to hear Jack and Goldilocks were still together and on the run, relieved that at least something had stayed constant while the rest of the world was in chaos. They walked through the rolling hills of Bo Peep's family farms and soon reached the picturesque town at the center of the kingdom. The twins were delighted to see all the dainty cottage homes and brick buildings with pointed hay roofs again. They smiled seeing Haypenny Bank and the Shoe Inn and shops like Patacake Bakery and Jack Horner's Pie Shop, exactly all the same as their last visit. One thing was visibly different. The town that had once been full of farmers and shepherds hauling their livestock around was deserted. It's so empty, Alex said. Remember how crowded it was last time? Connor said. It was like a take your goat to work day or something, if I remember correctly. Froggy let out a sad sigh. Oh, it's the sign of the times, I'm afraid, he said. It's like this in all the villages in all the kingdoms. No one leaves their home unless it's absolutely necessary. They walked through the park at the center of town, and they were pleased to see that Humpty Dumpty and the little boy who cried wolf memorials and Jack and Jill Hill. The twins couldn't help but look at them a little differently, though, considering the information that they had learned from Mother Goose. Well, Connor said, looking across the park, check out the renovations. At the edge of the park, facing the twins, was Red Riding Hood's castle. Her new castle. It stood twice as tall and sat twice as wide as the previous one. It had several towers, each higher than the next, a large dome in the center, and a gigantic clock above the newly built front steps. Alex and Connor both tilted their heads and squinted at the new castle. There was something rather peculiar about it. It looks familiar, Alex said. Sure does, Connor said. It almost looks like all the other castles and palaces mixed together, doesn't it? Just wait until you see the inside, Froggy said. Red built me my very own library. It's just splendid. Hundreds and hundreds of books, and they're all mine. Well, that's wonderful, Alex said, sharing his enthusiastic smile. Don't worry, Froggy said. I kept all the books you gave me. They're in their own special section. He winked at her, and Alex grinned. She remembered the books that they had bonded over the first time they met. The trio made their way up the castle's front steps, and 2 guards opened the impressively large red doors for them to enter. Thank you, Becca. Good morning, sir. the guard said to Froggy and bowed like the previous set of guards had. Good morning, gentlemen, Froggy said. Does every guard know you or something? Connor asked him. Well, not exactly easy to forget, Froggy said. I don't fit in around here looking like this. I'm just glad the villagers stop fainting when they see me. Most of them anyway. They took the first steps into the castle and the twins gasped. There was a marble floor under their feet, golden pillars to their sides, an enormous grand staircase in front of them. And to no one's surprise, every wall was covered in a portrait of Queen Red in different, glamorized positions. She certainly spared no expense, Connor said, eyeing everything around him. He looked down at the floor and noticed a tiny basket-shaped tile connecting the corners of the marble tiles. It sort of reminds me of Cinderella's ballroom, Alex said, except like redified. A short and plump handmaiden was descending the stairs with an empty tea tray. Her cheeks were pink, and she was wheezing from the effort. Connor and Alex hid behind Froggy, remembering that their last encounter with her hadn't been a pleasant one. Welcome back, Prince Charlie, the handmaiden called out to Froggy. It was strange for the twins to hear him addressed by his real name. The Queen's in the library. I just served her breakfast. Thank you. I'm headed there now, he called back to her. Would you like me to bring up some lily pad tea? Oh, that would be wonderful, thank you. 3 flies in mine, please. Would you like any tea, Alex, Connor? Sure, yeah, what the heck, Connor said. It wouldn't be a visit without some lily pad tea. The twins followed Froggy up the stairs, passing the handmaiden who stopped in her tracks and stared at them peculiarly, not being able to recall exactly where she knew them from, but clearly remembering that it hadn't been a good experience. They reached the top of the stairs and made a right and traveled down another impeccably decorated hallway, also lined with portraits of Queen Red. They found a pair of golden doors with library, place of books, carved into the wall above it. Connor pointed out the carving to... Oh, a corgi. Hello, corgi. Connor pointed out the carving to his sister. I bet you anything it's so she doesn't forget what's inside. He quietly snickered into her ear. Here we are, Froggy said and pushed the doors open. The twins stepped inside and they were awestruck once again. It was the most elegant library they had ever seen, beating even the one in Snow White's palace. Alex almost teared up. Connor nodded with raised eyebrows. It's beautiful, Alex said and placed a hand over her heart. Not bad, Connor said. Shelves stretched to the tops of very high ceilings, with ladders and balconies on various levels. A group of armchairs and sofas was placed in the center of the room, near a large fireplace with a giant wolf-skin rug that had once been the big bad wolf himself, spread across the floor in front of it. A beautiful chandelier hung at the center of the room, giving an abundance of light, perfect for reading. There were many portraits of Queen Red hung all around the library, but an especially large painting was hung over the fireplace of Red reading a book in one of the armchairs. The twins had to do a double take because just below the portrait was the real Queen Red Riding Hood, seated in an armchair, reading a book in an identical position as the one in the portrait. She looked up as soon as she heard the doors. You're back, Red said when she saw Froggy. She tossed aside the book, which was thin and mostly pictures, and ran to her beau. They collided into a giant embrace. Queen Red Riding Hood was a beautiful young woman with blonde hair and bright blue eyes. She was always dressed to the nine in red gowns and a hooded cape, but the twins noticed something different about Red. She wasn't wearing nearly as much makeup or jewelry as she had been before. Perhaps her relationship with Froggy had simplified the young queen's need to impress. Froggy tried kissing her, but Red pulled away. No kisses, remember? Red said, I love you to death, darling, but I just find you repulsive at the moment. There's nothing worse than a cold and clammy kiss. Oh my gosh, you two! Red's full attention was diverted to the twins when she spotted them. She stared at them as if Froggy had brought poisonous snake into the castle. Red, do you remember Alex and Connor? Froggy asked. Remember? How could I forget? Red said, not looking away from them. Hi, Red, Alex said politely. How's it going? Connor said nicely. Forgive me, I don't mean to be rude, Red said to the twins. It's just that, every time I see you two, I'm heartbroken, kidnapped, or homeless. The twins couldn't argue with that. She was right. No worries, Connor said. Red eyed them nervously for a minute before saying anything else. So, what brings you two back to this world? She asked. Vacation, visiting your grandma? Not exactly, Alex said. We were lost in the woods, Connor said. Surprise, surprise. Thank goodness we saw Froggy in the forest, otherwise who knows where we would have ended up, Alex added. Red glanced back and forth between them and then to Froggy. So you brought them here? She said through a forced smile. Lovely. They had nowhere else to go, Froggy said. I couldn't let them wander around alone at a time like this. Red looked at the twins, still anxious. No, I suppose not. The twins tried to break the awkward tension. Well, your new castle is beautiful, Alex said. I feel so at home at many homes, actually, Connor said. Was there a theme for what you were going for here? Inspiration, mostly, Red said blankly. Connor said. Well, it certainly feels, inspired. The handmaiden knocked on the door and entered the library carrying tea for Froggy and the twins. Oh, wonderful. Why don't we excuse me, wrong voice. Oh, wonderful. Why don't we, catch up over some tea? Red said. Her tone didn't match her enthusiastic words. The handmaiden set the tray down on the table by the armchair and left the room. I'm going to move this over here so that I can lean back. It's easier to sit on this bed leaning back. Where was I? The twins took a seat across from Froggy and Red, and the impromptu tea party began. Froggy held Red's hand lovingly. Is this all right? Yeah, there's multiple kitties. She has 2 kitties and a puppy. Well, she's not a puppy anymore, but you know what I mean. Of course it is. I'm wearing gloves, Red said. It was silent for a couple of moments, with only the sounds of their spoons clanking against their teacups filling the awkward tension in the room. So, how old are you two now? Red asked. You look like you've grown. We're 13, Connor said. Oh, that's nice, Red said. That's how old I was when I was elected queen. Of course, I have my granny to help me. How is your granny? Alex asked. Retired, actually. She lives in the Shoe Inn now, so I've taken all of her responsibilities over as queen. And, how's that queenship treating you? Connor asked. He sipped his lily pad tea and then spit it out immediately. It's been difficult, Red said. There's much more to being a queen than people realize. It's not all about jewels and fancy dresses and an abundance of affection. There are lots of decisions to be made about peasants and farmers and the needs and whatnot. Luckily, I've got Charlie here to help me. Someone tried to buy the bench my wife made for our kitchen table. Yeah, that's a no. That's a no. Stretching my legs. Okay. Well, that's nice, Alex said. Have you passed any new laws or anything worth mentioning recently? Red looked up at the ceiling, trying to recall what her latest act as queen had been. I raised taxes, she said happily, but then her smile faded into a frown. But the people didn't like that at all, so I quickly lowered them. My mistake. I didn't realize they would take it all so personally. Apparently, my kingdom has a strong ecology, so there was no need anyway. A strong economy, dear. Economy, Froggy corrected her. Oh, yes, economy, forgive me, Red said. We've grown so much food and produce and so much wool that our trades are very strong with other kingdoms. The Red Riding Hood kingdom is the breadbasket of the world. No pun intended. The twins politely nodded along, but they were shocked that someone like Red was still allowed to lead a kingdom. Froggy decided to save the twins from the conversation and escorted them to the corner of the room. I want to show you something special, Froggy said, and pointed to a shelf where all of Alex's old books were kept. Here's where I keep all of your books, Alex. This Red is very different from the Wasteland Red. This is very different than the Wasteland Red. Yes, absolutely it is. Well, they look very happy here, she said with a smile. Her eyes fell on the titles of the books just below them. Around the World in 80 Days, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Frankenstein, she discovered with delight. Froggy, these are all classics from our world. Where did you get them? Well, your grandmother, actually, Froggy said. She wanted to thank me for helping you last time you were here, and I must say, the people of your world definitely know how to tell stories. Alex smiled at the thought, knowing that most of the authors of this world had been inspired by the stories of his world. I've read a few myself, Red said, trying to stay relevant in the room. What's that heavy one that I enjoyed so much, Charlie? The one with the funny language? The complete works of Shaky Fruit? Was that it? The complete works of Shakespeare, my dear, Froggy corrected her. Oh, yeah, that's the one, Red said. It was a lovely read. One story is so pleasant, and then the next is so tragic. Took me nearly a year to get through them all. I hope he's still writing in your world. He has a lot of potential, if you ask me. Connor laughed, but made it look like a sneeze. Don't worry. He's around, Connor said, and he wondered what Shakespeare would have thought about Red's endorsement. Alex was looking through all the other books in the library. Some of the titles caught her eye were Royal Romances Through the Ages, The History of Magic, Mammals of the North Kingdom, and The Extinction of Dragons. She knew she could easily spend a month in Froggy's library reading and Shaky Fruit's globe. Reading everything in it. Well, look at this one, Froggy said, pulling a book from a high shelf. I think you two would appreciate it. He handed it to the twins, and they read the title together. It had a dark red cover and illustrations pasted on the pages inside. Myths, Legends, and Collecting Spells, Alex read with surprise. Is it about the wishing spell? That and many others, Froggy said. There are all kinds of gathering folklore in there. I had no idea there were so many, but who knows which ones are real and which ones are not. They flipped through the pages, skimming past chapters about various legends of the fairy tale world. A few caught their eye as they searched. The sorcerer's sword was a weapon believed to have gone missing during the Dragon's Age and allegedly could cut through anything. The Wand of Wonderment was a magic wand built from the most treasured items of the most hated people in the world and made whoever possessed it invincible. The Vanity Crown was made of the most valuable jewels in all the kingdoms and was rumored to transform whoever wore it into the most attractive person alive. They came across the section devoted to the wishing spell, and Alex read aloud as Connor followed. The wishing spell is a legendary spell mostly told to children to inspire a work ethic that grants one wish to whoever collects a series of special objects. Several people have died trying to test the theory of the wishing spell, but due to all that is unknown about the spell, it is highly unlikely that the spell exists and is thought to be only a childish story. If I had a nickel for every time we proved a childish story was true, Connor said under his breath. I'm going to move this down. This looks like... Yeah, that's better. That makes more sense. There was a knock at the door, and the handmaiden poked her head inside the library. A message from the Charming Kingdom has just arrived for your majesty, she said. Oh? Red asked. Well, let's see it. The handmaiden walked in and handed Red the letter. It was a white envelope that had a golden glass slipper wax seal on the back of it. I wonder what this is all about, Red said as she opened it. I doubt Chance and Cinderella are throwing a ball at a time like this. She read the letter and her eyes grew wide. She placed a hand over her mouth. Oh my, she said. What is it, my dear? Froggy asked. Pinocchio Prison has been attacked by the Enchantress, Red said, looking up from the envelope. The Charmings are hosting a meeting for the Happily Ever After Assembly. Red handed him the envelope, and Froggy read it with the twins looking over his shoulder. To Her Majesty, Queen Red Riding Hood, we regretfully inform you that late yesterday evening the Enchantress attacked Pinocchio Prison, consuming it with her enchanted plants. There is still no word of any survivors. Your presence is requested tomorrow evening at the Charming Palace, where a meeting will be held with all of the heads of state and the Happily Ever After Assembly to discuss the current situation. Your attendance will be expected unless word is otherwise received. Sincerely, their Royal Majesties, King Chance and Queen Cinderella. Red sighed and nodded her head. I'll need to leave at once, Red told the handmaiden. Please prepare the carriage for us to travel, and another carriage for overnight luggage. The handmaiden nodded and hurried out of the library with her instructions. Alex and Connor looked at each other, knowing that they were thinking the same thing. We have to go to this meeting, Froggy, Alex said. We have to know what's going on. Well, why's that? Red asked. The Enchantress has our mother, Connor said. We need to figure out a way to save her. Well, what did your grandmother say? Red asked. I forgot they all had CH names. Yeah, they do all have CH names. Alex and Connor looked at each other cautiously, wanting to break the news to Red gently. She doesn't even know we're here, Connor said. She doesn't want us to know anything, Alex said. Red cocked her head sideways and glared at Froggy. Hold on a second, she said. Are you telling me that the fairy godmother's runaway grandchildren are hiding in my castle? Froggy turned a little shade of light green. Like I said, I couldn't leave them wandering around in the forest, he said with an apologetic laugh. Red turned the same color as her clothing. Do you know how much trouble we could get in if the fairy council finds out that they're here? Red yelled. It doesn't matter because no one's going to know where we are, Connor said sternly. Excuse me, but who died and elected you my successor? Red said. I should have thrown you both out the minute that you got here. Connor raised an eyebrow and crossed his arms. But you won't, he said snidely, because you know what's worse than involuntarily housing the fairy godmother's runaway grandchildren? Voluntarily kicking out the fairy godmother's runaway grandchildren. Red made a couple of high-pitched grunts, and she looked between the twins and Froggy. She hated being compromised in her own home. How are you going to get inside that meeting? Froggy asked the twins. It's for the heads of state only. It's very exclusive. Besides, your grandmother's going to be there. How would you hide from her? Alex sighed, thinking of how they were going to pull it off. Well, we need something to hide in, she said. Something large enough to fit both of us inside of it, but not suspicious looking. Connor's eyes lit up and looked around the room, searching for something that he had seen when he came in. He walked across the room and pulled a portrait of Red off the wall and brought it to her. Hey, Red, Connor said, do you still have this dress? Alex and Froggy walked to Red's chair to take a look at what they were referring to. In the portrait, Red was wearing an enormous ball gown that protruded from her waist and flowed to the floor. I believe so, actually, Red said. It was one of the only dresses that was saved from the fire. Wait a second. You're not thinking what I think you're thinking, are you? Connor looked up at Froggy and his sister with a giant smirk on his face, and it didn't take long for them to figure out what he was planning. And once they did, matching grins appeared on their face. It's perfect, Alex said. Oliver says to message you that he loves you. I love you too, Oliver. I have to admit, it is very clever, Froggy said. Red was appalled. Have you all gone mad? Red said. You expect me to waltz into a meeting with the happily ever after assembly with two brats under my dress? Absolutely not. I will not have any part in this. Alex and Connor looked at each other and their grins disappeared, each gesture for the other to say something to try to convince her. Red, Alex said, leaning down by her side, our mom is in danger. We need to know what's going on so we can figure out a way to save her. Connor leaned down on Red's other side, taking his sister's lead. She's all we have, Red, Connor said. If anything happens to her, we'll be orphans. Red was accosted by their pleading faces. She knew she couldn't say no to that. Even she wasn't that selfish. All right, Red said. I'll help you out this one time, but after this I'm done. Large smiles appeared on the twins' faces. Red rubbed the sides of her head, wondering how on earth she had gotten involved so easily. It had been such a quiet day until the twins showed up. Thanks, Red, Alex said. You won't regret it, Connor added. Red sank into her chair. Can I get that in writing? Great chapter. We're going to take a quick pause so that I can use the bathroom, figure out what's going on with the cats, possibly let them in, and then I'm kind of hungry, so I'm going to try to get something to eat or, like, bake better coffee because the coffee I have is pretty gross, but I'll probably come back and read another chapter, so it'll just be a few minutes. We're just taking a quick intermission.